Thank you. I'll admit this just got very intimidating. I was expecting mostly non-curlers, but it's all curlers, and I'm seeing a lot of people that know a lot more history about the club than I do. So I'm sure I'll be getting yelled at afterwards. That's not the way it happened. So I hope I do you all proud. So thank you all for coming. So can I have, by a show of hands, how many people have never been in a curling league? Please raise your hand. Okay. Oh, good. There's a few of you. All right. So the rest of you, who's been in a curling league? Raise your hand then. Okay. We're going to do a little bit of a demo for the non-curlers, okay? So I'm going to put a stone down, and I am going to be sweeping it. And I want the non-curlers first. I'll yell 1, 2, 3, and you yell sweep, and try to get me to sweep that stone as hard as you can for 10 seconds straight, okay? So when I say 1, 2, 3, you yell sweep and try to get me to sweep this stone, okay? So I'll get my 8-ender here. So on the count of 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay. You need some work. Curlers, we're going to show them how to do it now, right? Okay, curlers, you got count of 3. 1, 2, 3. So curling is also called the roaring game. Everything about curling is loud. We got the granite going down the sheet is loud. We got people sweeping is loud. We got skips yelling and screaming. Everything about curling is loud. And it will make more sense in a little bit why I did that demonstration. So let's begin our talk. Mom, I am sorry. Mom, I know this is not your favorite photo, and I do have better ones of you later on. But there is a story behind this, and Tracy did just tell a lot of it. So we moved to town in '78. I was just before my 2nd birthday, and should we make this fun? If you're in one of these photos, or your spouse, or your child, or your parent, you have to raise your hand. Okay? So if you're in this, you got to raise your hand. All right. So my parents didn't know anyone, and Rex and Linda Pope, they invited them to curl and join the curling club, and it was a great decision for my parents because that's how they met a lot of their friends. And because of them joining a club, I then grew up in the club, and that's how I've got interested in it. So that's how I'm here today. So this is my curling in the gym program. We get the 5th graders to come down, and the first question I like to ask them is, what is special about curling that makes it different from all other sports? Do we have any non-curlers that want to throw out a guess? Non-curlers. What's special about curling? It's different than all other sports. Crickets? No one? Glenn? It's on. We got a lot of sports on ice, though. Any other guesses? Glenn, you got one for me? Come on, throw out one, buddy.
Mixed gender teams?
Yeah, we do have that, but that is pretty unique. Any other guesses? Gretchen? Sister Gretchen? No? Okay. Well, here's an example. We got Leroy Will here on the left. He's getting the Spirit of Curling Award from our then president, Carol Piotr. And Leroy didn't start curling until he was 77 years old, and he was able to curl until he was 87. And when I was 16, I curled with my dad, Doug Eskert. My dad was in his 50s. Doug had been in his 30s. And then we had Loyal Lundorf, who was in his 70s, maybe 80s at the time. And we all curled in the same league on the same team. So it's what you call a lifetime sport. There's very few lifetime sports out there, and there's very, very few that are team lifetime sports. So that's what's unique and special about curling, what I like about it. So for the non-curlers, all 5 of you in the room, we're going to go over some of the basics of the curling. So you got 2 teams of 4. You got your leads, your seconds, thirds, also called vice skips, and your skips. And each player is going to throw 2 stones, and you're going to alternate when you throw them. So if you look on the bottom, you'll see, oh, that got resized. Okay, so the red lead, and then the yellow lead, red lead, yellow lead, they're done. So now it's the seconds' turn. They alternate back and forth, thirds, and then finally the skips. And that arrow is supposed to be pointing at the final red, or the yellow S, which is the hammer stone. The hammer stone is the last stone thrown. And you want the hammer stone. You want to go last in curling, because if everything's going wrong, you still have a chance to fix the end. So when all 16 stones are thrown down to the other end, the end is over. Baseball has innings, curling has ends, and then one team will score points, and then you throw them back to the other side. So you'll do that 8 times in a standard game. If you get into Nationals, Worlds, Olympics, they'll do it 10 times. So let's talk about curling duties. There's 2 of them. You're a sweeper. So if you're a sweeper, that's lead, seconds, and sometimes the thirds. And when you're not throwing a stone, that is your job to be the sweeper. The other duty is the skips. So the skips, they act like the team general. They use their brooms to communicate the team's strategy. They tell the teammates how and where and how hard to throw the stone, the direction, the curl, and they tell everyone when to sweep. So when it's the skips' turns to throw their stones, it's the thirds or vice skips' job to step in and do that. So let's talk about the sheet of ice. The big circles, what is that called? The house, very good. So we got the big one, the blue one, that's the 12-foot because it's 12 feet across. White one is 8, red is 4, you got the button, and then the pin and the T is the very, very center where those 2 lines intersect. So you start out, first thing is in the hack, when you're going to slide and make your delivery. So the hack is a lot like starting blocks in track and field, and what you're going to do is you're going to push off from there, and you're going to slide your stone all the way down to the other end. So the stone has to be released before the near hog line, and it has to go all the way past the hog line. Does anyone know why we call it the hog line? I think a lot of even the curlers might not know this one. So this is Scottish sport. If you had a large, and in Scotland they have a lot of sheep. So if you have a big field and you're trying to push your sheep all the way across the field, as they're getting pushed across, that back line of sheep are called the hog line because those sheep are as slow as hogs. And anything slower than the hog line, there's something wrong with it. It gets called, they're taken out of the herd. And that's the same thing true in curling. If your stone doesn't go all the way past the far hog line, it gets called, they're taken out. So you have to release before the near, and it has to go all the way past the far hog line. It's not allowed to touch the sidelines, and it can be touching or in front of the back line. So let's talk about scoring. The object is to get more stones closer to the center or the pin or the tee than your opponent. When the end is over, it's the job of the thirds to determine the score, and only one team scores. So if the game was over right now, the end was over, we'd say 1 yellow. Now, even though the stone isn't completely on, we'd say it's 2 yellow. This is called a biter. Now it's 3 yellow. Now what would it be? 1 red. That's right. Wow, this is good. 1 red. Pastor Andy, maybe you want to come right here because I think you're the only non-curler here right now. So it's not how many you have in the house, it's how many you have closer. So even though there's another yellow in there, it's how many you have closer. And this red doesn't count because it's not touching. So these stones would be called draws. Anything in front would be called guards. and anything that touches the sideline gets pushed through the back line, short of the hog line, gets taken out from play. So what the sweep? Why are we sweeping? Well, what happens when we sweep is you're heating up that ice. And by heating up that ice, you reduce the friction, and that allows the stone to go farther and straighter. So let's pretend right now I'm the yellow skip. I'm in a lot of trouble, right? Red's about to score 5 points on me. That's huge. I'm probably going to be shaking hands and quitting early if that happened. But I got a big port there. I can get in. I just have to be in that white 8-foot or closer, and I can save the end. So that's the importance of the hammer, the last stone. So I go and throw it. Too light. Didn't throw it far enough. But with sweeping, you can make that stone go up to 15 feet farther. Also, as the stone goes down the sheet, it is going to curl. What happens if it's going to curl too much and it's going to wreck on that front stone? Well, we could call sweep and make it go straighter and still make it past that front stone. So sweeping can turn a bad shot into a good shot, and that's what makes it a team sport. So let's get on to the speech. Now you all know everything about curling, right? Three of you are still confused, but that's okay. We're going to move on. So some disclaimers. These are the old newspapers that I went through back in the 1800s. These are amazing. They don't have every year, but they have a lot of them. If you're ever researching something, come here. This is a great place to do it, so it's really cool. A lot of times in these newspapers, they just put the standings. You know, who won the Bonspiel, who's winning league, whatnot like that. There's not a whole lot of information. So I had to rely, there was a lot of articles from older curlers who curled back in the beginning, and I could put in more information from them, but a lot of times they're asking someone in their 80s, hey, what did you do when you're in your 20s? I don't even remember what I ate for breakfast, so that's kind of hard to do a lot of times. So sometimes the years are off on some of these. And also in this speech, I got 145 years to talk about in 1 hour, so I'm just going to try to hit the highlights. And I'm going to put a little less emphasis on the last 25 years. So let's move on. There we go. So where did it all start? First record of curling was in Scotland. And they dredged a pond in northern Scotland, and they found this curling stone. I got my pointer stick here. It's called the Stirling curling stone. It had a date and a name on it from 1511. So that's where we know curling started. It was probably going on a long time before then, but that's our first record of it. The first time we have it in written record is in 1541. And then by 1565, we started seeing it in paintings. So we have the winter landscape with bird trap here in the bottom. There's the bird trap, and you can see them curling there. And then you have the hunters in the snow, and you can see the curling going on right there. It was introduced to Canada by Scottish immigrants in 1807, and then into the United States by 1831. The oldest clubs in the country are Detroit, Milwaukee, and Portage. Let's talk about them. Yeah. So Detroit Curling Club. First site of curling in the United States was just outside of Detroit, 1831 Orchard Lake. By 1840, there were several curling clubs around Detroit, but they all kind of merged together in 1885. So technically the club was formed then, but they were curling in that area a lot longer than that. In 1840s, they started curling on the Milwaukee River, and then the Milwaukee Curling Club formally formed in 1845. And here is the Portage Curling Club. They were curling on the Wisconsin River by 1850 they formed. So if you ever want to start a good argument, you go to a Bonspiel and you have people from all three of these clubs. You just ask, hey, who's the oldest club in the country? And Detroit say, hey, we're the site of the first curling. We're the oldest. And then Milwaukee will chirp up and say, well, no. We've been the same club for longer than you guys have. We're the oldest continuous operating curling club in the country. And then Portage will chirp up and say, no. Milwaukee, you've moved cities 3 times. You don't even curl in Milwaukee anymore. We are the oldest curling club in the country. So why am I telling you this useless information? It's this guy right here. He's a curler and a merchant from Portage, and he moved to Waupaca to start his own hardware store. This is H.W. Williams, and they first started curling just down the road here, just a couple blocks that way, on Mirror Lake. And the Republican newspaper in January of 1888 talks about the founding 13 members of the club. So Coolidge was the president, vice president was Williams, Scott was the secretary, and Oberon was the treasurer. So where do they curl? They curled down here on Mirror Lake from 79 to 83. By 84, I see they moved over to Shadow Lake. I'm guessing they also curled there in 85. So what do you think the problems are with curling on a lake? Well, Mirror Lake's a steep hill, and you had to own your own stones back then. So they had to carry their own stones up and down that steep hill. That's a major problem. The other one, they're competing with skaters and ice fishermen. Can you imagine being out there curling and your stone just disappears through the ice because there was a fishing hole there? Or how about throwing your stone and you take out an ice skater? So they're competing with these other problematic people, I guess we can call them. You're also exposed to the elements. Not just the curlers, but also the ice. That sun beats down on that ice, destroys the ice. You got snow coming in, snow getting blown around. So the elements aren't very good. And also think about lighting. You can see outside, what is it? It's 6:30 and it's already dark out. So the only time you could really curl is usually a Saturday afternoon. So how would you fix that problem? What would you do? Some suggestions from you guys. What would you do?
Tiki torches.
Tiki torches. What else we got? That might solve lighting, but what about the other ones?
Build a house.
Huh?
Build a building.
Build a house. Well, close, Mom. What they did is they built an opera house. So this is the opera house in 1882. No, I'm kidding. That's the Clintonville Opera House. So in 1888, they actually purchased a roller skating rink. This is just on the other street from Trinity Church, just on the north side. There's a hardware store there. I've seen it either it's right where the hardware store is, or it's the lot just north of it, but it's on the east side of Jefferson Street there. So the main principal owners and directors of this opera house were curlers. And the idea is they were going to have the opera house, which is a lot like a community center. They're in the spring, summer, and fall, they were going to have events. And then the winter time, it was going to be set up for curling and ice skating. So this is the first time they curled in a covered ice. And they curled there until 92. By 92, I started finding articles in the newspapers complaining about the curlers taking away the community center from the rest of the community. So you think about the winter time back then, you don't have internet, don't have TV. What do? You go to your community center to get entertainment. And if you have 24 people taking that away from you, there were some people that were upset about that. So they left the club in 92. Was it because of the pressure from the community? Was it because curling inside a roller skating rink is a bad idea? I don't know. I don't know. But I know they did leave that in 92, and in 1904, that building burnt down. So where would they go? They need a new place. They need some proximity to water. They need privacy from those pesky skaters and ice fishermen. They need someplace they can build a structure. And they need to go somewhere so the opera house can operate year-round. Where would they go? Has anyone got an idea here? Anyone? Anyone?
The river.
The river. Yeah, Vince. Right here. See that? There's an island in the river, and it's got a little bit of a bridge going to it. I don't know if that's man-made or a natural land bridge, but let's take a look at that river. We got a couple of pictures of it. So this is looking from northern Maine, looking downstream. So you can see the buildings on the right. That's the buildings on Main Street, kind of like the on the back of the Paca pub. And you can see the river actually goes right up to the back of those buildings back then. It was like it's actually touching them. So what happened later, that river, and they moved that channel. So I'm guessing on the right side there, that's now a parking lot. And I'm guessing the islands are where Rotary Park is. So that's just a guess. But let's look at it from the other direction. So this is from the south, like from the courthouse looking north. So you can see that river, that island up there. It's got like a big flat spot there. I'm guessing that's where the curling was. So October 1892, curlers go meet with city council. They secure the island with a 10-year lease, and they have 21 members at the time. They build a one-sheet structure, and it has a little warming house so they can get out of the elements, they can warm up, they can get the sun off of them. I know they must have had lighting because it talks about them curling in the evenings during the week. So there must have been some type of lighting. But by 96, they're already discussing moving locations. And it became very obvious in 97. 97, they got the ice all made. That takes a long time. If you're not a curler, it takes a long time to make the ice. They get the ice all made, a snowstorm hits. The river raises 4 feet. So think of their structure. It's right on the banks of the river. It raises 4 feet, refreezes. So now their ice sheet is 4 feet underwater. Their structure is probably only 4 feet high now above the ice. And I'm sure that water is going to recede over time. So it's too dangerous. They can't curl there. So they got to find someplace else to curl. Now, let's talk about this. This is over here. Right here, you see that? So when I was a little kid, I saw this painting on the wall in the Waupaca Curling Club. It is my favorite thing in the entire, well, maybe the beer taps are my favorite thing. But this is a close second, okay? It's my favorite thing, and from I was a wee little lad, I was told this is us curling on the Waupaca River in the 1800s, and we fell through. And that's what I believed my whole life. And then I decided to Google curlers falling through the river. And guess what I found out? This was not taken in Waupaca. This was not taken in the 1800s. This was taken in Scotland in 1965. So the majority of my life, I was lied to. Mother. I know. So, is the fact, did we fall through the ice? I don't know. I've read all the newspaper articles from back then. There was actually quite a bit of information. There was interviews from people that did curl back then. No one mentions falling through the ice. I've talked to older members of the club. They said, yeah, I'm pretty sure that photo is fake, and I don't ever remember hearing us falling through the ice. So did we? I don't know. I kind of think it's maybe a lie that was told so many times it became true. You know, that's kind of my take on it. But either way, what we do know is the river was too dangerous and we needed a new location. So where are we going to go after this? Anyone have any ideas?
Where it is now.
Oh, that is great. Yeah. Yeah, this shocked me. This is not in our notes. So we have our history typed up here by Jan Hankey, and it is not mentioned in here. And I was shocked when I discovered that, yeah, actually what happened is 11 curlers went up to the Roberts family. Remember that name because it'll come back up again. So they went to the Roberts. They obtained a 5-year lease with an option to renew for another 5 years. And this is at our current location on the Franklin and Badger intersection. They paid Simon Jensen, to build a 50 by 160 foot shed and with a little lean-to warm up at a cost of $500. I do not know how many sheets in there. I'm guessing if it's 50 feet wide, they had at least 2, but I don't know. I could never find that information. They used city water to flood. And kind of the cool thing is they allowed skaters to come out on Wednesdays and Saturday nights. And even better is they brought in a live band to play music for the skaters. So the skaters could come curl on lights underneath, in the shed. They'd charge them 10 cents or $1 for the whole year. Unfortunately, though, in 1909, our membership plummeted. They no longer could keep that lease, and they had to leave premises. The shed was dismantled, and it was used to make the Chatty Corners baseball field fence. So they got to move again. This is a common theme with curlers. They're constantly getting forced to another location. It's amazing that they were able to stay together for all the years. So where do they go next? They go back to the river. This is just a Google photo, but it's a good description of what that curling was like back then before there was a slide. So they're back to the lake. I have little information from back then. I did find that the City Park Commission decided to spend $30 a winter to keep 4 acres of Mirror Lake open to skaters and curlers. So that's where they curled for at least a little while. I did see in our club notes that we may have curled in the modern garage parking lot. I don't know where that is I haven't found any other information to back that up, but that's another probability. So we're on the lake, kind of depressing. We're back where we began. Membership is really low. Oop. So, early 1900s. The Waupaca has a few starch potato companies. They also have some storage houses along the river. And interesting, you guys remember H.W. Williams, our founder? He was one of the investors in some of these companies. So, 1917, we have a curling revival. They get 40 men. Their membership plummeted. Now they got 40 men, 10 teams, and they start playing in one of these starch factories. Where exactly? I'm not sure. We have interviews from people that say, Frank Stratton says, we curled on East Fulton Street. Ed Hart's got a great story. He talks about parking in the back of the high school. That's the Waupaca Rec Center. They would then walk across the frozen ice to the starch factory and watch the guys curl along the river. But Dr. Christofferson said, no. It was in this other Fisher and Fallgatter mill on Auburn Street, somewhere over here. I saw another person said, it was east of the Wagner Street on East Fulton. Another article said it was on the starch factory owned by John Jardine, and another one said, it was on Shear Street. See all these names? They're all curlers. So it is possible that they moved around from 17 to 22 and were in multiple locations. I'm not 100% sure, but because there's at least 3-4 references to this site up here, I'm guessing this is where they curled, especially in the 20s. And this is kind of funny. You guys might find this funny. So apparently some curler somewhere upset their neighbor. You don't have Facebook to complain about back then, so what would you do? Exactly. So, oh no. That's not it. Oh well. We're having some technical difficulties. So basically, I can remember what happened is the lady said, if the curlers would spend as much time shoveling their sidewalks as they do in polishing the ice, trying to get a block of granite to land on the tee, the sidewalks in this town would be pretty passable. So someone had an upset neighbor. But in 1922, the starch factory burnt down. So they had to move again. So where are they going to go now? Any ideas? Well, good. I might not get yelled at after this speech. This is good. They go to the main square. So on the north side of the courthouse, they had 2 sheets of ice. No skating was allowed. And they never curled on Sundays because curlers tend to be a little bit what? Loud, yeah, we tend to be a little loud. So that's why I did that demo in the very beginning. So curlers tend to be a little bit loud. They never curled on Sundays because they were too loud the other 6 days of the week. And there's a funny story with Dr. Christofferson. There was a visitor to town, never seen or heard of curling in their life. They go and they see all these people doing this weird, funny thing on the ice by the courthouse. This gentleman walks up to Doc and says, "Hey, what are these guys doing?" He says, "Oh, these are inmates from the Waupaca Asylum. They're out for their weekly exercise." The visitor looks at them, watches them sweeping ice, sweep, sweep. And I can understand why you'd think, oh, they're a crazy bunch, aren't they? That makes a lot of sense to me. So there's problems with curling on the square. Same with curling on the lake. You're exposed to the elements, humans and the ice. And there's no guarantee that they can curl there the next year. So they got to find a place to curl. Where do you think they went? Back to Franklin Street. Yeah. So this is what's in the history books. This is what I always assumed. I didn't realize it's actually our second time there. If you look up there at the name Roberts, you see it's the same family, different first names. So probably what happened is this is their children, I'm guessing. So they went to the children, the 40 members bought the land, charged everyone $25 so they can build a shed. They got halfway done, oh no, we're gonna need another $25. Get $25 from them, $50 total. They build 2 sheets of ice. They have a little warming benches. And in 1928, we get our nonprofit status. 1930s and 40s. I have very little information. I went through all these books, all of them from that era, and all I got was these 2 things. World War II, 28 members paid $3 each to curl. 1940s, we have our first trained ice makers, and they did it by committee then. So that's all I got on the 30s and 40s. Oops. It's going to be a little slow there. So this guy, Ray Pinkerton. Here we go. Ray Pinkerton was our president in 1950-51. I could talk for 2 weeks straight about this man right here, okay? 1950-51 was a huge year for our club. So under Ray, we expanded to a 4-sheet club. And you can see here, you can see all they did is they added an extra sheet on both sides of the existing shed. They also built a viewing room and a clubhouse. You can see that out here. I believe this is the oldest photo we have of our clubhouse. So you can see the clubhouse is over here, and this is the ice house with the windows. I know this photo was taken after 1957 and before 1964. Why do I know this? Bruce told me it. Denny, do you know why? This building right here, the end of this, you can see the shingles are a different color. That's the compressor room. Compressor wasn't added till 57, so we know this is a 4-sheet club. It had to have been added after 1950. It had to be before 57. So they added that clubhouse. Ray did something else. Ray, in 1948, founded the Clintonville Curling Club. Clintonville, they could afford to build a 2-sheet club, same place they curl today, but they couldn't afford the stones. So Ray says, don't worry about that. I'll take care of that. So what Ray does is he puts 2 sheets of stones in the back of his station wagon. That's almost 2,400 pounds. I'm sorry, 1,400 pounds. And he drives them up to Clintonville. They curl a game, and then he brings them back the next night. And I actually got a picture of his station wagon driving to Clintonville with all that granite in it. So to honor Ray and all he did for both our clubs, we have the traveling home and home Ray Pinkerton trophy. So currently we own the trophy. So what happens is the Clintonville and Waupaca men get together one Wednesday at the end of the season every year. We have 4 games going on at the same time. We add up the total points for Waupaca and the total points for Clintonville, and whoever has the most points at the end gets to keep the trophy. It was gone for several years, but it is back. Great timing for my speech, too. We're having a little tech. There we go. So let's talk about that new clubhouse in 1950. So they spent $6,000 to expand from 2 to 4 sheets. They added let's show you that. So this is a great photo. You can see all 4 sheets there. Unfortunately, it's a newspaper clipping, so the quality isn't the greatest. They also added a viewing room. You all remember that old viewing room? They had the opera seats in there. I don't know which opera house that came from. Since ours burnt down, I don't know if it was from another opera house, maybe from Waupaca or something. I don't know. But we had the old opera seats in there. They also had a small lounge with 4 small tables so you could sit down and talk about the game afterwards. They had bathrooms. Does anyone remember the bathrooms in the old club? I swore if I sat down on that toilet, my butt would freeze to it and I wouldn't be able to get off it until March. It was so cold and miserable. Yeah. So they had 2 bathrooms and they had 2 leagues with 30 to 40 people. 1950 was also a big year because what happened? Women started curling. Woohoo! So December 14th, they started women curling. They had basically a learn to curl. The women came out, they tried curling, and we were able to get 14 of them to join the club. So here's the 14 ladies that joined. They all got together, they voted, they decided we want to be called the Waupaca Locks. So that was their name. There were 4 teams. Has anyone got a family member in here on this list? I see a pope. There's got to be a pope in there. Anyone else got a family in there? No? No? All right. So the first officers. On the left there was Helen Pinkerton. She was treasurer. Margaret Dushek was the secretary. And the president is on the far right, and that's Vivian Babe Scott. So she was the first president. So this was a big deal for women in the 1950s. You started to see articles like this in the newspaper. Hubbies who wait for supper when their wives take up curling. So I can just only imagine there probably weren't a lot of sporting events for women at that time. So it was a big deal. But it wasn't popular with all men. Let's see if I can read this here. It wasn't in the sport to use, it isn't the sport it used to be, he lamented. Why, I can remember when it took years to become a skip, a place of high honor. In the good old days, no one would even deign to speak to a lowly number 1 man, unless it was his own skip to give him the devil for his ineptitude. Now, what do we have? Number 1 men seem to be accepted on the equal social basis. Everyone on the ice speaks to everyone else. The caste system of the good old days has disappeared. Perish the thought. Even the women are curling. The old curler's eyes were misty as he took leave and departed. Gone were the good old days. And I say, good riddance. Right? Right now, anyone in this room who's a curler will tell you, curlers, we are the most accepting people in the world. We want everyone to be part of our curling family. So I would think there's some reason why the membership plummeted in 1909. Maybe because of attitudes like that are fortunately gone now. So also in 1950, remember I told you I could talk about this forever, we have youth curling. So we have our first, it becomes an intramural sport. They get 50 kids. 50 kids. Think about how many people graduated from Waupaca back then? Does anyone know roughly? Roughly? About 100 a class back then? So there weren't many kids. So they get 50 of them. 7 boys teams, 4 girls teams. In 1951, they start the boys state championship. Principal Danielson and Coach Sammy Taylor have 40 kids that they're coaching. 1960, the famous football coach, Leroy Haberkorn, takes over as the boys varsity coach. And then we get 6 boys championships between then and now. If you are on one of these teams, I want you to raise your hand. So the first year, 61, we have The Bammel team, I think he's on the bottom right there. 65, we have the Rex Pope. There we go, Rex Pope's team. Anyone else on this team in here? No? 69, there's the other skip right there. We got the Bruce Becker team.
Was that Alan Penn on the previous slide? Yeah. Here he is.
Alan Pennebecker, yeah, he started curling again. And that's Kelly Taylor's older brother, I believe. Bruce, you got with you John Stange, Steve Paul, Larry Boehm, and it's the next one I was thinking. So, Preston Walla, he's up in the upper right, so this is under Coach and Jason Smith, so we win it in 2008. They repeat, they do it again the next year, same skip, Preston Walla, he's on the right by Coach Jason, and then they do it again in 2011 under Zach Witrovich as the skip. So we had a lot of success in our club under the youth curling, the high school team. In 1970s, they dropped the WIA status for curling, and that's a good thing because that allows the kids to curl in the adult leagues. It means they can curl down for state, national, world, junior world Olympics. If we were still WIA, they couldn't do that. They would have to pick one or the other. So let's go back to the 50s. 1955, the Scots Tour, Fellowship Tour happens. So what this is Scotland sends us 8 curlers. They go and they curl in several different clubs around the country, and they keep a tally of all the points, kind of like the home and home. They keep all the tally of the Scots points, all the tally of the Americans points. They add up this total score, and whoever has the most points gets to keep a traveling cup. Now this photo wasn't taken in Waupaca. It's posted in our trophy case though. The Scots are on the left with the hog horror brushes, and they're being made fun of by a skip from the Chicago Curling Club with his broom. So what happens when they come to Waupaca? Well, they get greeted down on the main square. We have our high school team there to greet them. The Locks are there. The high school band is there, but they're worried about their lips freezing to the instruments. So they play windows of the bus to greet these guys. They get addressed by the mayor, Mayor Johnson, and then they're given a parade down Main Street, a broom parade, in open convertibles in the middle of the winter. They then come to the curling club. They curl 2 games in the morning, 2 games in the evening, and they move on to the next club. What were the scores? I have no idea. Couldn't find that information anywhere. The women Scots come to the United States a few years later in '58. Unfortunately, they did not come to Waupaca. The closest they came was Wausau. We did send 2 women's team up there to curl against them. I don't know the scores or anything that happened from them. So let's move on to 1957. There we go. So back then, how did you control the ice temperature? Any idea? Before '57, how did you control that? Open and close the windows. You can see that right here. If it was cold out, you open the windows. If it got too cold, you close the windows. If it got too hot, you close the windows. Unfortunately, here in Wisconsin, central Wisconsin, you end up with periods of time where the temperature is above 32 degrees. So constantly they're having problems where they just couldn't curl because the ice was starting to melt. It was too slushy. I found there were some years we'd start curling in the end of November. And you gotta remember it takes weeks to make the ice. So that means it was frozen for most of November. And there's other years we didn't start curling until January, middle of January. So it really depends on the season. There was also one year I was so excited. I was going through the books, the old newspapers. They're talking about this big bonspiel that we're gonna have, a big tournament against Wausau. And they were talking about it every single week in the paper. I finally get to the week where the tournament's going to happen. Like, all right, I'm going to get some good information. Get there, nothing. Nothing. Well, that's really odd. Next page, next week, nothing. Next week, nothing. Finally, the next week, they mentioned we had to cancel the tournament because it's been too warm, unable to curl. So, what would happen when it would get slushy out on the ice? Sometimes they would be able to take snow from outside, throw it on the ice, and then shovel it off. So that's how they would kind of get rid of some of that moisture, but a lot of times they just couldn't curl. So in 57, they add refrigeration. So I love this photo. Does anyone else think the guys on top look a little like gangsters? So they add a refrigeration unit. So on the top, you can see they're behind what we call the compressor. That's part of the refrigeration unit. And the bottom, you can see they're out on the ice. This is before the ice is made. And you can see the black lines going up and down the sheet. And what that is that's the coolant pipes that pumps a brine underneath on the top of the sand. They pour water on top of that, and that's how they freeze the ice. So the advantage is that you can curl regardless of the temperature outside, and it also allows for a better and more consistent ice. And you don't have to worry about, your bonspiels being canceled. So, 1964. This is the old 4-sheet shed, the wood shed. They're having problems with condensation dripping on the ice. I'm wondering, I don't know if this is true or not, but I'm thinking it might have to do with the artificial ice. If it's colder in there than it is outside, you get a lot of moisture coming in. It's dripping off all the beams. You saw all the beams in there, so it's kind of like curling in a minefield. Stones are bouncing all over the place. So they decide we need to fix that, and they're going to build a new metal structure. So not only is it 4 sheets wide, the new metal one, but they're going to extend this roof line from there out past to here so they can build a kitchen right along here. So let's take a look at those pictures. Brian, recognize anyone here? Is that your dad? Yeah. So here's for $26,000. They built this new metal structure. You see the big metal beams. They still had the board walkway going around, and then back then we still had the boards going between the sheets. You don't see the beams anymore because now we have an insulation barrier, just a reflective sheet to keep the heat down and help keep the moisture off the beams. And there's the kitchen. I promised you there was going to be photos of you, didn't I? So this is the kitchen. Oh, we got 2 people that got to raise their hands in here. So I believe this is a Chinese New Year's party in 1993. So they added the kitchen so we could finally cook some meals there. Move on. There we go. So 1973. Is Steve still here? Did he have to leave? Okay. These 8 guys decided, hey, you know what? Let's be famous. Let's put Waupaca on the map. Let's set the world record for the longest curling match. And what they did is they played 180 ends for 38 hours and 2 minutes, and they set the record. Unfortunately, another club on the other side of the country, or other side of the world, Lockerbie, Scotland, they were doing the same thing almost at the same time. And theirs was, I think it's 42. I'm having a hard time reading the screen. 42 hours. So they had the world record. Unfortunately, never got posted or recorded because it was broken within a few days. So, yeah, bummer. Mrs. Felt, I see you up there. So 1997, Jan Hankey, longtime curler, and Mrs. Felt, who's in the back, they got together and they created curling in the gym. And what that is the kids would learn the basics about curling in the gym. You can see they have little boards with wheels on it. They would use that to roll back and forth. I have some here. These are the modern ones that the kids use now. And actually, I got the kids coming to the club in just a few weeks. So they would go to the gym, they would learn some of the basics, they would come to the club, curl an actual game. They would send 1 homeroom at a time, 18 and 24 kids. That's about 140 kids per year. In 2006, Mary Felt won Wisconsin Teacher of the Year Award. She got to go to Washington to meet the president, And this program now is extremely, extremely popular. The United States Curling Association used to have these, and I would borrow them from them every year. But it got posted in some website somewhere, and now it's done all over the country. So it's an incredibly popular program now, done all over the place. So we had to buy our own sets. So I'll be actually bringing these over to the school in a couple of days. 1998, does anyone recognize this? Yeah, that's the reverse raffle. That's John Piatra and the reverse raffle. So what we do is we sell 350 tickets. The last ticket drawn gets the $3,000. Every 10th gets 100. What is it? The 200th one gets $200, and the second to last get, is it $500? I think it's $500. And this is our biggest fundraiser. This is $10,000 a year. It's also a great time. John always had a great entertainment. There's costumes and side bets, and usually he had something funny on the ice. I remember there was one year something with frozen turkeys being curled down the ice. Does anyone remember? Was it a turkey shoot? Yeah, it's a great time.
We've never been able to duplicate it, but the drumsticks work pretty good.
So, Waupaca isn't happy unless we're always moving or tearing something down, right? So in 1998, everyone has gotten sick of their butt cheeks being frozen to those old toilets in the old clubhouse. We decided that we're going to build a new clubhouse. So you can see here the old building getting torn down. I don't see any insulation there, do you guys? No, it was a cold building. So they tore down the old building, and with muck construction, they built one with a new metal frame. Here at the next photo, you can see where the old kitchen used to be, right there, and then that got turned into what is now the locker room. So we have a nice new viewing room and dining room with big tables. We can seat a lot more people. We don't have to go to the country club anymore for our bonspiels, for our dinners. We can also have a more modern kitchen. And we had to do all this in a big hurry. And the reason why is 1999, we had the Junior Nationals. Jan Hankey had some notes on the side talking about all the problems that happened with that bonspiel, especially in the opening ceremony. Some about one flag bearer didn't show up. Another flag bearer passed out on the ice. The bagpiper came out with the bagpipes, and the bagpipes broke. And then like the stomach flu ran through the whole competition. So does anyone remember that? Yeah. Okay. So we're talking about some tournaments here. Let's move on and talk about some other tournaments. A bonspiel is a fancy word for a curling tournament. So the very first bonspiel we had was back in 1899. This was in the original shed that we had at our current location, the one that got torn down. So this was a big deal. They were talking about it for weeks, months in the newspaper. Every week, front page, they were talking about the big state bonspiel. This was a huge deal. They're expecting 12 teams to come to town. Big thing for our little town at that time. They're talking every week who was donating what. Every business was trying to gift the other business. The team, or the curling teams all got together and said, hey, we're going to donate 4 red hone stones to the first event winners. Hardware stores are given fishing rods. Jewelry stores are given gold pins and pocket knives, silk umbrellas, scarf pins, sweaters. Problem? There was a big cold snap. Sub-zero temperatures. Nobody wanted to curl. Only 3 teams showed up. Devastating for our club. They had to go and just grab spectators, throw them on the sheet and say, you're going to curl because we can't have a tournament with 3 teams. So they just grabbed people and said, make a team. So that was our first bonspiel ever. As you know, we moved locations a lot over the years. Every time we moved locations, if we had another bonspiel, they would call it our first bonspiel. So even if you look at some of our printed material over here, they'll say it was our first bonspiel. But this was truly our very, very first one held in Waupaca. And it's now kind of like our men's bonspiel today, which is usually the end of January, sometimes beginning of February. We mentioned the Home and Home Trophy. That was in 1957. This is at the Clintonville Curling Club. Is Rich Man here? Rich, you raise your hand, buddy? There you go. I named my second child after Rich. That's his story, and he's sticking with it. 1960, we had the Mix Fun Spiel. So that was our mix spiel. And that went on for a number of years. Unfortunately, it kind of petered out. In 1987, Jan and Mrs. Johnson, your name is up here. You can raise your hand too. They started the Blaze Orange Bonspiel, and of course that would happen during the opening of deer season. So a lot of ladies' husbands were gone for the weekend, so they would decide to go have fun themselves and come to Waupaca. In 2006, we started our senior men's. That was takeover for the mixed bonspiel. For some reason, that's the only photos I can find. And in 2015, Rich started the open stick bonspiel. So let's talk about some awards that our club has gotten over the years. Come on. This next photo is going to shock you guys. It should. This is going to be the oldest photo, if it will come up. Come on, baby. Oldest photo we have in the club. You know where it's been hiding for all these years? Right here. So 1890. Oh, no. No, it went past. Oh, no. It's gonna. There, is that there? Yes, there it is. 1895. This is the Pfister Cup. You guys know the famous hotel in Milwaukee? So that's a very wealthy family. They owned the hotel. They had a bunch of tanneries. Very wealthy. They donated this cup right here, that trophy right there. And it was going to be competed for in Milwaukee for 6 years. And whoever won the trophy the most over 6 years would get to keep the trophy. It was valued at $500. They had 4 gold medals. Those were valued, I believe, at $80. I don't know what's on the bottom. Does anyone guess what those little flask-looking things might contain? I don't know. So maybe scotch or something like that. So this is the oldest photo we have, I believe, of any curlers from Waupaca. So on the far right, you have Chandler Jr. He was the skip. The taller guy in the center left was his father, Chandler Sr. And then the other two, I'm not 100% sure if Lee is on the left or if Hollenbeck is, but the other two, that's the other two names. So this is the oldest photo. If you look at the stones, I mentioned before that you had to own your own stones back then. You'll notice that the color of the stones are slightly different, so you can tell the matched pair, so there was different granites back then. So that is now the oldest photo that we know of Waupaca. We used to think it was this one. This is Frank Stratton on the far left. He started curling, I know, when he was a little guy in 1903 on the Waupaca River. I'm guessing, based on his age, this is the late 1910s, 1920s. And the funny thing is this exact photo showed up at the museum here this morning, right?
Yesterday.
Oh, yesterday. Showed up yesterday. We already had a copy of this. The back of this one said 1931, maybe?
It said, yeah, around.
Around. So they were kind of guessing too. So we're not quite sure where or when this photo was taken. We at least know the people that were in it. And this was what we thought was the oldest photo for a long time. So here's a 1960s, the Midwest Curling Association bonspiel. Is there a heart in the building? No heart. How about anyone's mother or grandmother in here? No, this is the first Badger. So the women have a state tournament. It's called the Badger. And this is Tilly Moses. She won it. That was a local team. So the first year was here in Waupaca, and a hometown rink won it. This is pretty cool. So at the senior Badger down in Wauwatosa, Carol Piotr's team, they scored a perfect 8-ender. For you non-curlers, that's incredibly rare. So all 8 stones are in the house. The other team couldn't manage to take one out, and they couldn't manage to get one in the house to out count it. So it's pretty dang hard to do. The chances of getting a perfect 8-ender is 1 in 120,000. Has anyone in here scored it? Oh, you're right there. Yeah. Yep. Yep. Penny Man. Has anyone else scored an 8-ender in here? Yeah, incredibly rare. Not done very often. So, Mrs. Johnson, you have to raise your hand here because this is your boy. So up here is Greg Johnson. Greg Johnson is a local curler. I grew up curling with Greg when I was in middle school. Greg was on a playdown team with Todd Burr. Todd Burr's on the far left. They went 1 state. They went to nationals, won nationals, went to worlds. I think it was in Edmonton. Is that what to say? Yeah, Edmonton. And they won bronze at worlds. So we got one of those guys here. You got to raise your hand, Larry. That's the rule. Larry won the Wisconsin State Lions Bonspiel in 2011. And then remember Preston Walla from our high school team? That's Preston Walla here in the middle. PJ Herbity is another curler in Waupaca. And the first year that they had college nationals, UWGB won it. And that's 2 Waupaca curlers. So, curlers, what happens if you win a Bonspiel? What happens? What do you get? You get a pin. So any curling club you go to, they're going to have one of these. They're going to have a pin collection. Who's got a pin collection in their house? Yeah, most of us got a pin collection in the house. Some will put them on their hats like you have over here. Some would put them on their sweaters. A lot of people just throw them in a drawer somewhere. Yeah. So why do we have pins? Well, there's club pins, and what you do with club pins is you trade. So after you curl a game, it is pretty much mandatory that you sit down with your opponents afterwards. Either have a drink or a meal, you spend time and you talk with the other team. So when I was in Tosa, I was curling against the guys from Detroit. They said, hey, I never been to a Waupaca Curling Club. I said, well, I never been to Detroit. What you do is you swap pins. So you end up with a pin collection from people that you've curled from over the years. You can also get them for when you win Bonspiels, which I talked about. So here I won the second event in Tosa. Mom, you were the runner-up at the Bob one year in the second event. If you win a league, you also get a pin. So here I won the Open in 17. And who remembers buying USCA pins years ago? No one remembers buying the USCA pins? No? Well, Denny does. Instead of having mandatory dues, what they would do is go around and try to get everyone to buy pins to support the organization. So it could be use pins for fundraisers or dues. We talked about the Scots. This is they also went to Canada. This is something I got off of Google. So the fellowship pins and also special events. So those are the reasons we have pins. So I talked about the club and how it's changed over the years. Let's talk about the most important part of equipment that has changed over years, and that is the stone. So first, curling stones. You've seen this photo before. They were just channel stones, something they found out of the river that was nice and smooth. They would sometimes drill a little holes in it, kind of like bowling, so they could slide it down the ice. And they used those until like the 1650s. Then they moved on to these called rough block or boulder blocks. The Historical Society has one right here. So you can see this is just a homemade something, some guy with a chisel and a boulder they got out of a field, cemented a handle onto it, and that's how they curled. So these were used till the 1800s. And the funny thing is you read stories, there were some that were just famous that they had to write books about them. They would weigh 100, 117, 115 pounds. Can you imagine if you could throw, you had to be a big dude to be able to throw that 150 feet. And then it would take out everything, you know? It would be like a snowplow and everything else would just scatter and no one could take it out. So your team was pretty much guaranteed to win if you had a brute that could throw a 117-pound stone down. But, you know, that caused arguments. So some people would say, well, I'm not going to curl with you if you curl with that stone. So that was happening. But by 1900, in Scotland, there were 7 different polished, these are called polished stones, manufacturers, and they had 14 different types of granite. So if you look there, you can see all the different colors of the stones. Those are all the different types of granite, and some of them are absolutely beautiful. They're black with like green little veins going through it. They have pretty funny Scottish names that I can't remember off the top of my head. I apologize. So today there's only 2 manufacturers left. You have Canada Curling Stone. They own a quarry over in Wales, and they make the red and gray Trevor curling stones. The other company is Kays of Scotland, and they have the common green, which is that, and the blue hone, which is this. And this is very special. So this is an island off the coast of Scotland, not very big. It's like 240 acres, but it's 1,000 feet high. And there's a bunch of endangered species of birds that live there. So they can't go out there very often to get granite. They can go out there once every 10 years. They chip off a 10-year supply of granite and they bring it back. And the reason why this granite is so special, what this is a volcano that came up out of the ocean. And so you have this volcano like this. Over time, the soft basalt on the outside eroded away, and all you're left with is that volcanic flue right there in the center. And because it's out in the ocean, it cooled very quickly, and the grains for that granite are very tight. And because they're very tight, they can repeatedly get hit and not break. Also, especially the blue hone is very special. Let me move on a slide. The blue hone is on the bottom here, and the common green is on the outside. That's the bottom. So the running surface is this. That's the blue hone. It's very dense granite. It's not prone to pitting, so it gives you a great curl. And if you see it in the Olympics or Worlds or Nationals, they have to have the blue hone running surface. It's mandatory, otherwise you can't host. So it's a very important granite. It's the only place in the world that they can find it. So for how long is that granite going to be there? I don't know. The red hone, which they also got out there, is already gone. So all they have, the blue hone and the common green out there. Let's move on to our curling stones. So what stones were they using here in Waupaca? So I talked about in that earlier slide, before 1945, you had to own your own stones. And they would travel with them in these boxes. And you don't want to curl with a warm stone, right? You throw it on the ice, it's going to melt down, right? So they would pack these boxes a lot of times with snow or ice to keep them cold. And think about 1900. It was hard to get Scottish stones. They were expensive. You had to get them all the way from the other side of the world. They couldn't fly them over. You had to come over in a boat, take a long time. So they're hard to get, expensive. So a lot of times the local curlers would use whatever they could find to make a curling stone, such as this ugly thing right here, right? Just take a piece of granite, chip it down, and try to make something. But the bottom of this is flat. So the skips had to know not only what the curler was able to throw, but also know what their stone was able to do. This stone won't curl, so it just runs straight. Whereas you had something with a rim on the bottom, such as this, it would curl. So sometimes they curled with wood stones, like you can see over here. It looks like a metal band around the middle. There's parts in Canada where they used metal stones. I forget what they call them. It was like Ironsides or something like that they called them. And that's what they used for a while. They tried to make it easier and more reasonably priced to use stones that made here in Waupaca. I believe, I'm not 100% sure, but I believe this stone right here is from 1887. The Waupaca Granite Company made a bunch of curling stones for the curlers. You can tell this has been used. There's lots of big chips out of it. So it was a used stone at one time. Problem was that this big phenocrystal, that's those big mineral crystals in there. It's very prone for chipping, breaking, pitting, horrible type of granite. Just doesn't work. That's why there's only 2 granite companies left in this world. So the local granite just didn't work. In 1899, I remember I showed this earlier, they used the red hone as a prize, so that's how some guys got their stones, was through bonspiels. And then in 1945, we purchased 32 used match stones for 2 sheets. And then right before we expanded to 4 sheets, they bought additional 32 so we could have match stones on all 4 sheets. In 1964, we bought our blue hone stones. We bought 4 sheets of them. Curling stones will last about 40 years and they just start to wear out. The striking bands get worn down, the running surfaces get bad. So we had to purchase new stones, and in 2013, that was my job. I was in charge of purchasing the new stones, which there's an example there. You can see the blue hone insert and had the common green body. And the funny thing is, to raise money to purchase these, we sold our old stones to Hawaii. We sold them to the American Savings Bank in Honolulu. And what they did is they're doing a fundraiser. They would bring in some Olympian curlers. Wealthy people could pay to curl with the Olympian, and then they would also then go and golf, and then the money would go to the local children's hospital. So last slide, I got to talk about the most important position in the curling club, and that is ice making. When you talk about an ice maker, a lot of times people think we're talking about a Zamboni, and that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a person. So this is what our club looks exactly right now. We're in the flooding phase. You can see the refrigerated pipes going down, and we're flooding right here. That's Dave and Dave are flooding right now. We had committee ice makers in the 40s and 50s, and Ted Gerard, you want to raise your hand? Dennis's dad, then Bud Johnson, Mrs. Johnson's husband, Jason Smith, and then Dave Sherwinski passed away just recently. So here they are painting the ice. So you flood, you get a base, you paint the ice, you flood over that. Here's Bud painting the circles, and then you flood over that, you lay the lines. Here's Ted Gerard. He is pebbling the ice, so we're putting little droplets of water on the ice to make the stone go farther and also give it a better curl. Ice makers are also responsible at the end of each game scraping the ice. So here's the scraper. This is the first scraper we have. Bud Johnson's in the middle. We bought this in 1995. We bought another one in 2013. This is Jason Smith. And the ice maker is also responsible for keeping the refrigeration units, the compressor, up and running well. So being an ice maker is a kind of a thankless job. If you lose, Bruce, what happens with the loser? What do they do? They blame the ice maker. We lost because the ice was bad. We lost because the ice was bad. The winners love the ice. The losers always hate the ice and blame it on the ice maker. So it's a tough, thankless job. So I'd like to thank you all for coming today. Thank you. Is Patty, Glenn, Dennis, or Lori here in the building? Can you raise your hands? Thank you guys for sponsoring this. Tracy's in the building. Tracy, can you raise your hand? Is Jeff or Nancy in the building either? No? Okay, Tracy. Thank you, Tracy. I got so much help from them. They found me photos like we had that. They showed me the stones, showed me all these old newspapers to go through, showed me books with interviews from people. I had a lot of help from them, so thank you. I got to thank mention Jan and Vern Hankey and Mary Lou Becker for all the historical work they had done before me that helped me a lot, kind of put stuff together. I have to thank conversations I had with old-time curling families in this community that have a lot more history in it than my family does. So Bruce Becker, Steve Hansen, Denny Gerard, Kelly Taylor, Kurt Johnson, and Rex Pope. So thank you, all of them. Thank you, Mom and Dad, for teaching me the sport. I'd like to thank my wife, Ellen, Miles, and Nolan for curling with me. Unfortunately, Ellen's away on business, and our sons are right now in the middle of a soccer game for the playoffs, so they're not able to be here. So, yeah. Upcoming events, non-curlers. Raise your hand again. I expect to see you all at our Learn to Curl, November 15th, 16th, and 18th. All of you should come. Bring a friend. Bring your whole family. Bring everyone you know. On the 11th, we have the Can-Am. It's kind of like the Scotties, but instead of the Scots coming, we have the Canadians coming. So they're going to curl in Wausau the night before. They get up, come curl a game with us. Then they're going to go down to Madison. They're going to stay in Madison for a while and curl in the several clubs in the Madison area. It's kind of neat. They're going to 28 different clubs. They're going to start in St. Paul, Minnesota, go through a couple of clubs in Minnesota, all through Wisconsin, Northern Illinois, over to Indiana, and then finish at Detroit. So, and that is it. Tracy, can you show me the last slide, possibly? Problem I had is I had one slide. I spent literally over 40 hours trying to get as many photos as I could scanned and put into one slide, and it just is too big. It's kind of crashing the computer. So I have literally over 200 images in this presentation, and the last slide alone had high 80s. So we'll see if we can get some photos. Mom, I promised a better photo of you since I did you wrong on the first one. We'll see if it comes up. Do we have any questions while we're waiting for this? Yes, Glenn.
What kind of shoes would one wear?
Oh, excellent question. A curling shoe is just a shoe with a soft rubber sole and is only worn in the curling club. You don't want to bring any dirt onto that ice. So soft rubbers will give you a good grip to the ice. I curled for decades in just an old pair of gym shoes. This is a real pair of curling shoes. It has a soft gripper here that will go over your slider. This will allow you to slide on the ice. Yeah, so that's what we are for curling shoes. It just has to be clean, worn only in club, soft rubber bottom. Anyone else have a question? Paul?
Why did membership drop so much in 1909?
I don't know why. No one said the exact reasons why. Most of the records were just telling me the scores. I just heard read in a couple of things that said the membership curling kind of died off. You know, that was before the Depression and the World Wars, so I'm not sure what happened. It could have been the attitude of the people, you know. I don't know. Yeah?
Can you talk a little bit about the brooms?
The brooms, yes. I wanted to talk about that, but I know I can talk for hours, days, weeks about curling. My wife said I had to keep it short, so how am I doing time? Not too bad. So they started out with corn husk brooms like this. The problem with these brooms, who used one of these brooms? Raise your hand, who used? Now, you got a lot of blisters from using these, is that correct? This is what Jan Hankey told me. I've never actually used one. A lot of blisters. The problem with these is they shed a lot. A lot of debris on the ice, and when the stone gets over that debris, it comes to a grinding halt. So they caused a lot of debris. From that, they moved on to the hog hair bristles like this. These were better, didn't cause as much bristles. The only problem is it traps a lot of dirt, and then there's always hairs coming out causing the same problem. So they moved on from that to the brownie. Who had a brownie? Anyone remember this? Okay, fabric head like this. And then they moved on to my favorite broom was the hammer, where they had a fabric and it would rotate a little bit like this. Only thing, this was super loud and heavy. And then they moved on to this type with the swivel head now, like such. So all the curling brooms now are like this. I'm trying to remember what year it was. It was like 2000. maybe 2010, we had like Broomgate, where they found out they had a fabric on the curling broom head that was so coarse they could scratch the ice basically with, and they could steer the stone and put it anywhere they want. Now they've gotten rid of that fabric. You're not allowed to use it. And if you curl in some type of big tournament, they have a special head. It's a special kind of yellow color. It's lighter than this. It's more like a mustard color that you have to use that head, and they check and make sure that that's the fabric that you're having to make sure it's approved. So no one has any unfair advantage. So that's kind of the history of the curling broom. Any other, yeah?
Can you tell them how much that stone weighs?
Yes.
You don't really throw it down there.
No, you slide it down the ice. You slide it down the ice. We call it throwing. And they weigh, on average, 42 pounds. Now, you look at the stone, even though they might be the exact same size and shape, they will vary in weight because you have different mineral compositions in each stone. So anything that's between 40 and 44 pounds is considered a legal stone. So they do vary in weight. And then they do number the stones. They have little letters and numbers on the side that tell you who throws that stone, because you don't want to throw a stone that's 44 pounds and then throw one that's 40 pounds. So they match them up so the stones are as close as possible in weight. Any other questions? Yeah.
This is so silly question.
No.
Curling, you're not sliding it straight down the ice. Somehow you're curling the stone.
As you let go of the stone, you're going to put a turn on it, a twist. And as it goes down the sheet, so if I'm aiming right at you, about halfway down the sheet, as that stone starts to slow down, it's going to be able to grab that ice and start to curl in the direction that you put that turn on. Here's a funny thing. Physicists are arguing over why a curling stone actually curls. People have gotten their PhDs on it. No, I'm serious.
We can try.
Well, this is, I don't want to do it. If you took a pop can with the same rim bottom on it like this, and you go and you throw it on a table and you spin it, it will curl in the opposite direction that a curling stone will on ice. Go take a pop can, or take like a red Solo cup, turn it upside down, throw it on the table, or just spin it on the table, it'll curl in the opposite direction. So they think it has something to do with the scratching of the stone on the ice and how those scratches overlap, and that's what causes the turn, but people are arguing about it, so it's pretty cool.
What do the Scottish people call curling?
They call it curling. It's called curling, and I've asked some of our exchange students through Rotary, and they call it curling too. So, yeah. Any other questions? Yeah.
You gotta use the house stone to be fair, or do people bring their own stone?
Nope, you use just whatever house or whatever stones are at that facility. Yeah. Now, if it's like a national or a world something, sometimes if the club doesn't have really nice stones, they will bring their own stones to the nationals and stuff. If it's played like in an arena instead of at a curling club, the United States Curling Association, they will bring their stones, the best stones that they can get. Anything else? Yeah.
What's the depth of you say sheet of ice, that's like a basketball court? Or sheet,
A sheet of ice is, one sheet is roughly 150 by maybe 16. That can vary a little bit. Well, maybe not 16. The house is 12. It's about a foot on each side, so 14 feet.
a certain depth?
That depends on the facility. Now, we're a sand-based bottom, so we have sand. Our pipes are going through sand. We'll have about anywhere from 1.5 to 3 inches of ice. If you're playing on concrete, you can get away with less. So it depends on the facility, and you do keep reflooding throughout the year, so that ice will get a little bit thicker. Each flood will result in a millimeter of ice, so about the thickness of a dime, I think it is. So it takes a lot of floods to get up to be at least 1.5 inches. So that's the process we are in right now. We're flooding once a day right now.
And Neil will be there tomorrow.
I'll be there tomorrow. Tim was there today flooding, so yeah. Anyone else have? Yeah, Linda.
Neil, if you own your own stones, you own your own stones because you throw two.
Yes. Yep. You have to own a pair.
Bring one, right?
You'd bring a pair. And sometimes the guys I read would have one nice one and one boulder junk thing. So it's whatever they could get. Yeah. But yeah, now if you own your stones, they're retired stones that are no longer used. Anyone else? Yeah.
Wheelchair curling?
They do, and I have a photo of it. So I don't have one here, but a lot of times what happens with how many members do you think we have could curl with a stick? Do you say about a third of them?
Probably.
About a third of our members curl with a stick. So what we have is a device, take this head off, and they have just like a little cup on the end. So you could put it on this handle there, and you can push the stone a lot like you do in shuffleboard. So that allows people with a bad back or knee to keep curling even though they can't get down in the hack and slide anymore. Also allows people in wheelchairs to curl. So when we have our stick spiel, we sometimes have wheelchair curlers come. They have wheelchair curling in the Olympics as well. Is it? You think it's ready?
I don't know.
Let's see. I hope so. I promised my mom I'd have one good photo of her.
Nothing's come, oh, see, now it froze.
Now it froze. Oh no. Any other questions? How'd I do? You guys have, a lot of you here have a lot more curling history than I do. Did I screw up anything? No?
Well done, Neil.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
We're gonna dive for stones in Mirror Lake.
Yeah, Paul lives on Mirror Lake, and he's offering his dock as a site, and he's going to supply the curling or the air tanks for the diving. I just read that they found down in Lodi a bunch of wood curling stones in a creek there. They were doing some work in the creek, and they found these. What is this block with this handle on it? And they found out, well, these are old curling stones. So, yeah. Is it? Oh, it's kind of there.
It's like kind of thinking.
It's thinking it might come. There are some great photos of a lot of you in here. So we'll see. Give it a couple minutes. There is cookies and drinks in the back. Please help yourself, and maybe photos will be up. Oh, there she is. Oh, but that's like in the middle somewhere.
Beggars can't be choosers.
Beggars can't be choosers. Yeah, this is kind of the middle of the slide. So here's our board of directors. In 2003, will it go? Is it gonna go? Come on, Mom, I promised you one good photo. Meanwhile, why don't you get some cookies and drinks, and oh, Bruce, there's your mother. This is the locks. Rex, here's your dad. So Rex's dad won the several state championships or several championships or bonspiels. Dan and Mary Schomer at the fun spiel. You can see the old viewing room in the back with the seats from the opera house. Too many slides, too many photos. Here's the old clubhouse. This is again the Chinese New Year, I believe. Roger Green, Mike Tuss, Vern, and Don Anderson. I think this is the Badger women's. This is the old brooms that they used to use. They kept up on the wall. So here's the wheelchair curling that I was talking about earlier. This is for the stick spiel. Well, this is going to take a long time. Please feel free to go up and get some drinks and stuff if you feel like it. Thank you all for coming. It means a lot. Mom, here's your one good photo. Sorry. Yay. Yeah. This time Linda's eyes are closed. Yeah. So thank you all for coming. It means a lot to me. Thank you.